Thanks, Megan. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for everyone for making the time on your lunch hour to listen to us, for us to share some insights with you, some of the things that we've learned in 2018 and what we expect for 2019. So I'll go through the agenda very quickly with you of what to expect. But before that, my name is Kevin Jeewan. I'm a CPA, CGA by background. This is actually my third year doing this webinar, so always really excited to share some of the insights that we've encountered and learned about and have talked about in our offices. And wanted to give a special shout out to my colleagues here in the office listening in the boardroom. So thanks for that, guys. And thanks for the support. So some of the learning outcomes that we will share today around the staffing market in Toronto. Oh, hang on a second. So some of the learning outcomes we'll share today are about some of the staffing market trends in Toronto and in Canada, the GTA employment trends, and our 2019 salary report, and how to negotiate compensation. That's always quite a difficult thing to do for clients and candidates. So we'll give you two different perspectives on that, and hopefully there'll be some nuggets you can take away in terms of your year-end salary reviews to be able to speak to your manager, and if you're an employee or a candidate, to be able to clearly establish your value. And last but not least, in terms of how do you work successfully with a recruiter and get the most out of the relationship, and what should you expect? So just a little bit about Lannick. Lannick is Canada's largest specialized regional staffing and recruitment firm. We operate extremely differently from any other business in our space, meaning that we run a unique dedicated service model, and it's bias-free. And what that means is that you have if you're a candidate, you have a dedicated recruiter that looks after your needs and would show you any role that we're working on that you would be a fit for, ensuring that you have access to all roles across the GTA that we're working on. And if you're a client, you would have a dedicated account rep, a sales manager. And what that means is that sales manager would ensure that your needs are being met as a client, to ensure that you get the best candidate in the marketplace that is interested and available for the opportunity that you have available. So we're well known for our Lannick Finance and Accounting brand, and that is actually the business that I run here at Lannick, and it's a senior level practice. So many of you guys know us for that particular brand, and we place about 1,300 people. This year we'll place about 1,350 people through our 4 offices here in the GTA. But I wanted to talk about Procam Staffing a little bit. And this brand is where we help the individuals that we place in the Lannick Finance and Accounting business and support them in their career growth. So if there are any projects requiring cleanup, as an example, we do payroll temps, admin temps, accounting temps, to support on a contractual basis our clients and candidates throughout the GTA. Also, we have a very successful technology practice. So if you're listening on this call today and you have friends that might be in IT, we can help them with maybe their job search or finding appropriate people for their business to help them enable their business. And on our latest business that we started is Lannick Project Recruitment. And this, we tackle mainly roles outside of our specialty core, which is finance and accounting. So as an example, in this business, we work on roles for multiple hires, such as sales, customer service, as an example. So just really helping our clients trying to fulfill all their professional staffing needs. Some of you may know that we were acquired last year by a company called Vaco. Vaco has, it's an American-based company, and Vaco is using Lannick as a platform to grow in the Canadian marketplace. And as such, we're always looking for new acquisitions We're specifically looking for IT and finance and accounting acquisitions in Canada, and we're looking to expand our reach into different territories and different provinces. So mainly metropolitan cities as Vancouver, Calgary, Ottawa, and Montreal. We're currently having conversations with other firms in these markets. And also what we found very useful with the recent acquisition is that we're now able to support some of our candidates looking for opportunities in the U.S. In 440 metropolitan markets, and also helping Canadian headquartered companies with finding individuals for their subsidiaries. So we're going to get into the meat of the presentation now. So I'm going to share with you some quick staffing market trends. And I shared some of these last year with you if you were on this call. But if you look at the slide in front of you, the staffing market was in 2015 was $8.5 billion in Canada. And we expect it to eclipse $9.4 billion in 2018. So what does that mean in terms of the global staffing trends? So on a worldwide basis, the estimated size of the market is about $466 billion. And what we've seen is the market is growing quite steadily. So on a global basis, it's growing by 6%. The expected growth is 6% from 2018 to 2019. In Canada, we expect the industry to grow by 3%. And just so you know, the vast majority of revenue from that's represented here is from contract and temp, which is actually representative of our business as well. So in terms of employment trends, here's what we've seen in 2018. Year over year, employment has steadily increased in Canada, so it's great news for everybody. But it gets better if you are in Ontario. So in Canada, we've seen a 1.3% growth rate. In Ontario, 2%, and in the GTA specifically. So if you're listening on this call and you're in the GTA, it's a great place to be. It's almost 3% that we're experiencing in terms of labor growth, in terms of job growth. And the best has happened in November. We've recently received the Canadian Labour Force Survey, which showed the largest increase in jobs since March 2012. And that's 94,000 jobs. The majority of those jobs were in the private sector, about 80,000 of those jobs. So really, if you just think of the private sector as based on sentiment and based on investment, so that bodes extremely well for the GTA and in Ontario and in Canada. If you look at what in Ontario's share of those jobs was about 20,000 jobs, and that is a massive leap for an economy this size. Unemployment is at a 40-year low right now. So essentially, the economy is at full employment, and it's down. Unemployment is down to 5.6% in November. If you look at this slide now, I want to focus you on the right-hand side of the slide. If you look at the red line, indicates the unemployment rate in Ontario specifically. In 2014, it was close to 8%. And now, if you look at it sliding to the right, it is about 5.8%. And speaking to CPAs on the call, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner and the blue bar that's the largest at the top, we're experiencing the largest growth within professional, scientific, and technical services. Accounting and finance is included in professional, so great place to be in terms of your career choice. So what can we expect in 2019? The Bank of Canada predicts inflation would rise to 2.5% and taper off to the back half of the year, pulling back to about 2%. So how does that stack up in terms of what expected wage growth or salary growth? In terms of the Canada-wide, we expect it to be about 2.6%, so fairly in line with inflation. And excuse me. And in the Canadian finance industry, salaries is expected to rise slightly above that to 2.7%. And in Ontario, we expect to see about a 2.5%. So modest growth keeping up with inflation. So here's some of the stories that we've seen, or some of the anecdotes that we've seen. It's an extremely candidate-driven market. So I've been doing this now for 8 years. I've been at Lannick for 8 years. And every year I come on this call and I say the labor market is getting tighter and tighter, and trust me, it is. So we are seeing one of the toughest labor markets that we've seen for specialized talent. And the segment that we're really strong in, we're a very strong mid-market firm, mainly placing SFAs, managers, and directors. That is the tightest part of the market. So we're seeing candidates staying active on the market even after accepting an offer. We're seeing talent gaps leading to counter offers and multiple offers. We're also seeing, because of the changes in the CPA, we're also seeing clients willing to hire CPA students from public accounting firms. And because the rules have changed, you can finish your CPA within those companies. So that's creating a whole shift in the marketplace, and I'll talk a little bit about retention later on. We're also seeing a big shift in the growing gig economy. This used to be very much an IT type phenomenon where you would see individuals working on contract to contract or having multiple clients, but we're starting to see that more commonplace in finance and accounting now with the advent of the fractional CFO, meaning if you're a CFO, you may have 4 or 5 clients as an example. But also we're seeing professionals looking for flexible hours and work-life integration, especially for professionals with young families. We're also seeing a lot of investment in the GTA, specifically in the tech sector, leading to more industry openings for CPAs. So as an example, you've probably seen some of these companies in the news. So Microsoft is opening up an office downtown Toronto. That will create not only IT jobs, infrastructure jobs, but also it'll create CPA jobs as well, or professional jobs for CPAs. Google, again, Alphabet is investing in Toronto quite heavily. Again, that's going to create jobs not only in the IT sector, but also in the finance sector as well. We're seeing some trending markets. So we've helped, the big news in Canada this year is cannabis is now legalized. And we've seen a big run up to companies investing heavily in cannabis. And we've actually helped some of these companies land some very key financial individuals for their teams, also in cryptocurrency. We expect to see some risk this year in terms of regulations, deregulations in these segments, as well as some of the individuals that we've helped in these businesses, because they're inherently risky, have gotten a bit more in terms of base pay and potentially options and bonuses. So we've also seen a big shift from clients in terms of requesting candidates not only with a CPA or enrolled in the CPA, but also looking for candidates that have a strong preference or experience with technical skills, meaning tech savvy, as automation continues to increase across the finance spectrum, and looking for higher demand with software and ERP skills. Again, we'll talk about a tight labor market, how that may impact wages, and we'll talk about retention and how to counteract retention in a little while. But a lot of, there was an article in the paper which published the GTA's top employers. So congratulations to many of our clients that were represented in that survey and did extremely well. One of the key themes of these top employers, they're able to really articulate their employer brand and ensure that they can show how candidates coming in can really benefit from working with their brand, making sure that there's alignment, as well as training their managers on how to really articulate that employee proposition and employer brand in the marketplace. That's becoming very key in acquiring the best talent in the marketplace. So we'll get into the 2019 salary reports right now. And if you haven't done so already, please go to our website and download the salary reports. What I will say about the salary report this year, you would see more rules on the salary report, and that's an indication of us sharing more information as we grow our business. Again, we'll end up this year in the GTA with about 1,350 placements. So as we grow, we love to share more information with you. Again, this salary report is based on base pay only. There is no at-risk compensation, so no options, no bonuses. So again, just base pay. And if something doesn't look, if you have questions, I guess, and if you wanted to call in after the webinar, please feel free to call and we can give you a free assessment on your particular situation as a candidate or a client. So we'll start with tax. So if you look at this report, we start with the tax analyst, which is the most junior position that we would place in tax, straight up to the VP of tax. And we've broken up this slide or the ensuing slides into trends and career planning. So I'll talk about the trends first. So some of the highest paying jobs that we actually work on here in the Lannick Finance and Accounting brand are tax roles. Companies are willing to pay because tax professionals add real economic value to organizations, meaning putting tax strategies in place to save organizations money so they can deploy that cash into future business ventures or current business ventures, or pay dividends out to their shareholders. This market is extremely tight. There are actually more tax jobs out there than there are candidates. And so that's creating a lot of tension within the marketplace. We found that tax, from speaking to thousands of people this year, we feel that tax is fairly safe from automation, and it's mainly due to the changing legislative environment. And in terms of income potential, as I mentioned before, if you have the right leadership and interpersonal skills, and you are a leader within an accounting firm or a company and you're leading a tax function, it can be a very lucrative career. So in terms of career planning, what I would recommend is, because tax is so specialized, you may want to work in various parts of tax to see which area that you really like, and then go really deep into either personal or corporate tax. Because what I've found is that you, as a tax professional, you add real value and there's really specific knowledge, and you will be sought after for that specific knowledge to enable companies to implement the best tax strategies in Canada and in Ontario and the GTA. One of the other roles that this could be coupled with is Treasury. In large corporations and mid-sized corporations, we tend to see tax and Treasury falling under one department and one leader. So that can be an expansion of your role and skill set. We also recommend, in terms of career planning, considering doing the in-depth courses 1 and 2, because that's real knowledge and real skills that you can actually bring to an organization. And what we found is that if you're at an accounting firm right now and you want to move into industry and there may be a clawback on your in-depth, clients are willing to pay for that to help you with the burden of moving from one role to another. Next up is audit, and this is referring to specifically internal audit. So internal auditor would be the most junior audit position that we would place, and then go straight up to the VP of internal audit. So again, this slide's broken down into trends and career planning. What we've seen is a big shift in audit recently as processes become more automated. What we're finding is our clients are coming to us to find individuals with a CPA that have real technical savvy as well, to be able to help audit some of these automated systems. So we see this as a real convergence between IT audit and the traditional audit roles, and that will continue to grow. So in terms of the nature of this role, I would speculate that this would continue to become more and more automated, and the particular skill set that will be required, that was required a few years ago, would be very different in the future. So if you are on the call now and you're working at a public accounting firm and you are a senior, I would encourage you to think about audit as a potential career path and opportunity. And it is a definite way to get into a company. So as an example, the skill that you have as an external auditor aligns really nicely to internal audit. And what we found with some of our clients, some of the best people that they've hired were through the internal audit stream, and they ended up candidates ended up getting really, really well known, and started to learn different functions, and then they were brought into different functions to be able to work in either FP&A or in reporting, as an example. I would also have you consider, in addition to your CPA, looking at the CISA designation, which would align nicely with the changing audit environment. Treasury roles. This is a significant area for us as well, and actually a growth area for us here at Lannick. If you look at this chart, it starts with Treasury analyst and goes straight up to the VP of Treasury. So Treasury roles, again, it's very similar to tax and somewhat interrelated. What we've seen here again is more demand than supply for good people in Treasury. And if you look at where Treasury demand really lies, the main demand is within large multinationals. Think of cash moving across border and efficient cash management systems. What we found as well is in mid-sized companies, we tend to see a blended function between tax and Treasury. So again, interrelated skills, and potentially, what I would have you look at here in terms of career planning is setting yourself, in addition to your CPA, getting a more specialized designation within Treasury, such as a CTP. In terms of business partnering, there are two sides to Treasury, or probably more, but I'll talk about two. There's the administrative function, which is ensuring that there's compliance and cash moves very efficiently around the business. But also, if you really want to be a business partner in terms of forecasting for Treasury, that's a significant part of the business too, in terms of looking at future cash flows and being able to make decisions on investments based on that. Reporting and FP&A. So we've actually included reporting and FP&A into one segment. And if you look at this chart, the entry-level position that we would place would be financial analyst, and up to manager of financial reporting. That's just a segment, but we go higher than that as well. In terms of some of the trends that we're seeing, again, it's an extremely tight labor market for CPAs. And one of the biggest trends that we've seen this year is clients requesting CPAs from the firm that have not concluded their exams yet. So we have clients that call us and say, we'd like somebody that's in a Big Four public accounting firm, but they don't need to have completed their CFE exams. We will actually have them complete their exams here, but we like the training that they've had so far. So we want you to go and speak to these individuals and talk to them about the opportunity that we have at hand. And what we found is that because sometimes there are fee clawbacks for the examinations that you've sat so far, clients are willing to pay for those clawbacks to be able to liberate you and have you move to their company without any encumbrance of having to pay the fees yourself. So that's great news if you're on the call and you're thinking, I don't love my job right now. I really want to explore something in industry, but I have $10,000 in fees if I leave today. I would say don't worry about that. Give us a call and we'll help you walk through the thought process. In terms of career planning, if you are fairly early stages in your career, I think what you should be looking at is thinking of where do I want to end up in my career and how do I learn the quickest to be able to get me there. So I wouldn't get hung up on an extra $5,000 here or there, or potentially a bigger title. I would really challenge you to think of what skills do I need to take me to the next level. And you want to look at the right level. You want to look at the right industries, things that you would align with from a values perspective. And you want to ensure that any company that you go into will ensure that your knowledge is broadened over time. And that is the way that you would grow your career. And also the quality of people that you would be working with, i.e. your manager. In terms of continuing transfer reporting, again, because we're seeing CPAs taking opportunities outside of traditional roles. Again, reporting demand for great reporting people or candidates is extremely tight. And what I can tell you is, and I'll share that career planning in a minute, but in terms of FP&A, moving on to FP&A, what we've seen is that these functions are absolutely necessary to keep close to the business. So we went through a period of time where functions were being outsourced overseas, and FP&A was never one of them, because you are a true business partner. You need to understand the business, and this is a really key step in terms of being a value-added CPA, in terms of getting to know the business, making recommendations for the business in terms of pricing, in terms of margins, in terms of how to expand EBITDA. For career planning, in terms of what we've noticed recently, and this is more anecdotal than absolute, but we've seen most of the CPAs that are CFOs that we work with tended to be individuals that started in reporting. That was their key skill set. They were hired for that key skill set, but over time, they actually learned different skills in FP&A, and they ended up in the C-suite because their skill set was so rounded that they have different strengths and different facets to be able to make decisions and advise the business on key decisions moving forward. Also for FP&A, data analytics and especially visualization has been the big buzzword around our office here. And we've actually placed some individuals with some of the softwares that you see here. So mainly Tableau, Power BI as an example. So if you're an FP&A and you have these softwares on you have the skill set, you may want to put this, you definitely want to put this on your resume, because these are some of the skills that in significant demand in FP&A. Public accounting. So if you look on the screen here, there's audit, staff, and senior, straight up to senior manager. And some of the trends, we're seeing significant trends, and this is a very trying time for public accounting firms. Retention is a huge challenge for the firms. As I mentioned before, if you are in a public accounting firm and doing your CPA exams, before you had to stay to the end, completing your UFE and then getting your hours to come out as a CPA CA. And there's a lot more, I guess, a lot more movement from CPA students out into industry now. So it's becoming a big challenge for public accounting firms to actually keep some of their junior staff. And some of the things that they've put in place, so KPMG has done a really nice job of catering to the working professional and looking at various, I guess, various lifestyles, and it's called a KPMG Return to Audit program. And they seem to be having some success with that. Again, the public accounting landscape is really anticipated to change significantly as automation increases, as large banks, as an example, and insurance companies invest in machine learning and deep learning. Audit will change and will shift, and the skill set in audit would be quite different in the future. What we've seen as well is we work with some very key mid-market firms here in Toronto, and we're starting to see mid-market firms growing faster in some cases than their Big Four counterparts. Some of the individuals that run these firms are Big Four alumni, very smart people, and they're delivering a ton of value for their clients. And if you are in a public accounting firm right now, maybe a Big Four firm, and you're thinking, where do I go next? You may want to speak to us to connect you with one of these firms. They're fantastic and growing really fast. In terms of, I came from public accounting myself. I worked for PwC and E&Y. And what I found was it was a great place to learn. So public accounting is still a great place to be, a great place to learn. If you decide that you want to stay, I think it's a fantastic place to be. In terms of career planning, I would consider a mid-sized accounting firm. If you're very career-minded, you want to become a partner faster, I would say you may want to consider that. But if you decide that public accounting is not for you, I would say move on and invest your time and energy in the rest of your career. Non-traditional roles. So that's a growing trend among CPAs. Actually, most of the people that work on my team in the Lannick Finance and Accounting brand, actually 70% of us are CPAs. So if you're interested in recruitment, give us a call. And in terms of some of these roles that may be quite different, such as in investment banking and strategy, the designation carries more weight these days than it ever did. So there are some of those roles out there. They're tougher to get in too, but we call those purple unicorn roles around the office here, and they're tough to get into. But my career planning tip for you is, if you do want to get into one of those roles, get into a company through a traditional finance role. Get to know people in the company, like reporting, internal audit as an example. And you want to be able to prove yourself, prove your worth, and ensure that you get into that company that you really wanted to get into. All right, so compensation conversations. And I would say this is really awkward by any stretch of the imagination, but hopefully with some of the pointers here, you'll be able to have a less awkward conversation with your manager or with your employees. So we'll start off with the beginning of the process in terms of job interviewing. So always do your research. There are really good websites such as Glassdoor and PayScale to really understand which roles pay in which bands, and ensure that you're in the range if you want to go meet with a client or a potential employer before you spend your time going in to meet with them and realizing they're outside of that pay range. What I would say is just make sure that you're in the ballpark. Be honest up front about your salary range and what you would accept. Don't negotiate specifics. It's almost like a sales job where you really want to establish your value, meaning what you've done in the past and what you can bring to the job before you say what you're looking for. You really want to be able to spend the time on the quality aspect versus the quantity aspect of that interview. And I would encourage you to look at other parts of compensation. So if you look at, beyond the money, what is the bonus structure? How creative can we get with the stock options? Benefits and perks. Does it fit my lifestyle? Does it actually fit? Would the company pay for me to do, more tertiary education? Maybe an MBA. Maybe you want to round out your profile. Are the CPA dues covered? Is the company really supportive of me learning more and going on more, CPA accredited courses, as an example? And again, people are looking at the company that they look at as part of their identity. So as an example, the employer brand prestige is a big factor these days as well. But really step back and think of what you're looking for. And again, this is really personal, and I can't tell everyone on the call what to expect or what to do, but you really need to think about what's right for you and what you need out of this job or potential move. And, be careful with negotiations. Don't eliminate yourself from a great opportunity, because it may tick most of the boxes, but it may not take one. You always want to step back and really look at the whole proposition. What am I learning? Where am I going in my career? What am I going to gain from this? If you're a manager, you really need to ask yourself, who are the key players on my team? And, sometimes, they may not be, maybe they may be tight budgets, as an example. So you may want to gear most of your budgets or some of your disproportionate amount of your budgets to your key players, because those are the individuals that are going to drive more of the value for you. And in some cases, you just don't have the resources, but recognition comes free. Recognizing your employees for doing a great job is very significant, and you should stop to do that every single day when you have an opportunity, or especially through a review. You may hear some tidbits. You may want to consider non-monetary factors to retain staff. So career development, especially early in your career, for your employees, if they want to learn a ton and get a lot of experience, you may want to provide that opportunity to them. So you will get value from it as a manager in terms of great job done, as well as the employee is going to be learning and being sufficiently challenged. Also, you want to consider the type of work and look for ways to keep engaging your best employees. And culture plays a significant part. I know it plays a really important part in our organization. Work-life integration, understanding your employees' needs, and being very dynamic about how you approach it. In terms of relationship, you always want to build a positive relationship, and be completely honest with what you can and cannot offer. So if you're an employee, I think you have to really take stock of the environment that you work in and how you add value, and being able to really relay that value proposition to your boss and prove that, hey, listen, you know what, during my review, here's what I've done over and above, here's the value that I'm adding, here are the things I need to work on. Be honest, be open. Nobody's perfect. And I think that is really appreciated in the workplace. If you look at, I think noting key accomplishments down and bringing it to your review is really important. That so not only you can keep track of it, but you can also display that to your manager in a very sensible format. And again, every situation and every company is very unique. So if there's a mentor that you trust within that organization, somebody may have been there before you or in a more senior position, or it could be your boss, quite frankly, get to know how to navigate the internal environment a little bit better from folks that have done it before. And we thought titles would be a really fun topic to talk about, because it can be so confusing. And there's a lot of title inflation out there, and actually companies use it as a way to help great employees stand out from the pack. So as an example, if you're a hiring manager and you're struggling because, hey, listen, we don't have a ton of budget to be able to give somebody a raise or whatever it is, giving somebody the recognition through a title could be very significant. So you may want to consider that. Titles could be extremely misleading. So when you're looking for an opportunity, I think it's really important to look at the functional job, look at what the job actually is, look at what the roles and responsibilities are, and see if that's going to be a sufficient challenge for you, and if it's what you're looking for in terms of your next step in your career. So when you're looking for a job, maybe you want to look one title up. So as an example, if you're a director, you may want to look at a VP's role, or you may want to look at a senior manager's role. It depends on the size and scope of the organization, really. So titles, again, you have to really look at the function, the role, where it sits within the organization, what's the magnitude of the role. And keep your long-term plan in mind always. As Stephen Covey said, start with the end in mind. You definitely want to make sure, am I veering off from what I really want to accomplish, or am I actually on course to what I want to do? So always have that sense check when you're looking to make a shift. And this brings us to one of the final parts of the presentation. And I think it's really important to run you through this and what to expect from a recruiter. So as we say in our office, like, why don't we just tell our candidates to skip the line? Meaning, many companies we work with day in, day out, as I mentioned, this year we'll do about 1,350 placements across our 4 offices. And most companies post their own roles. But instead of being a candidate that, your application might just go into a general inbox and never be heard back from the client, work through a recruiter like us, as an example, because we have access to the key individuals in those companies to help bring your profile to the front of the line to ensure that your profile is viewed. And we can give you direct feedback on what's happening with your profile at all times. So if you want to, you should seriously consider that if you're looking for a new opportunity. And we can help you gain access into companies that actually don't post their roles. Many companies don't post their roles for several reasons. There may be a mission critical role that needs to be filled right away. There could be confidential searches. There could be no HR, as an example. So we're working directly with the hiring managers. And then for niche roles, hard to find roles, typically they may not post it because they may not get any applications. But we have such a deep network based on the 10,000 people that we meet every single year, and 200,000 people in our database. In terms of gaining entries into companies that you may not be may not be able to find or break into on your own. As an example, if our client is a real estate client and they were looking for specific real estate knowledge, but they couldn't find it, we as a recruiter can advocate for your profile. Let's say you had really strong IFRS as an example, and we knew that you would be able to have transferable skills to be able to do that job, but you were a great fit for the organization, a great fit for that manager. We are able to help bridge that gap because you cannot tell fit from a document such as a resume. So you want to ensure that you can have an advocate for you. Again, this is a people business, and we have relationships that we can help drive those difficult to break into industries. So what would a recruiter do for you for free? There's nothing that happens in this market for free anymore, but this does. So when you're looking at, we can assess your market value for you. Again, knowledge is power. If you're going out to market to find a new opportunity, why not talk to us? Why not talk to your colleagues? But you always want to have different data points to really understand, if I'm going to market, does this make sense? Resume reviews. We see so many resumes in the office. I can tell you that it's a huge spectrum. We help you get the best-in-class resume to go out to market with. Your resume is a silent salesperson. You want that resume to be able to get you into the door, and we will help you with that. In terms of interview prep, I'm sure everyone on this call is a strong CPA, but you are not an expert interviewer. But we'll help you get game ready to do the best that you can for the opportunities that are present in the marketplace. We can also help you with coaching and career planning. And in terms of passive searches, we have candidates that come to us that say, hey, listen, if you come across this opportunity in X, Y, and Z industry, please give me a call. And we actually do have individuals that are fairly happy at work, but will leave for the right opportunity. So we can help with that as well. That brings us to the end of the webinar. So thank you very much for spending the last 45 minutes with me. And I think we're open to questions at this point.
Hi, Kevin. Yes. So we've received a few questions through. So the first question is the growth mainly in contract jobs or permanent jobs?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think if we look at, I can only say, definitively from the data that we have, I think it's across the board, quite frankly. I think there's just more demand for great people out there. So like all our business units have grown this year. I don't think there's a bias to one or another. And just to build on that point, what we've seen is one of the highest conversion rates by sending contractors out. So as an example, if you took a contract job within 6 months, there was more than a 50% chance that you would be permanent in that company. So I think it's just, it's just satisfying or satiating demand out there in the marketplace, whether it's permanent or it's contract.
Okay, great. And the next question that we have here is, have you found any ageism, negative bias, hiring candidates over the age of 48 on a permanent basis?
That's honestly, that's tough for me to really comment on. I haven't really seen it. I think there's opportunities for everyone out there, and you just have to find the right level of opportunity. What I can tell you is that, there's fewer opportunities as you move up the ladder. The mid-market's massive and the bottom of the market is massive. But as you move up, it tends to be fewer and fewer opportunities, right? So I'm not sure if I can really give you a good answer to that.
Great. Thank you very much. And the next question we have is, when is an appropriate time in one's career to move from reporting to FP&A? Is there such a thing as making a move too early or too late?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So I think there's no right or wrong answer. I think it's about building expertise, right? And as I said before, when you look at where do you want to end up in your career? So as an example, let's say you took the traditional route, you came from a public accounting firm. I would say if you are in a reporting job in industry for 2 years, maybe 3, really, I think it depends on the timing of the opportunity. So I would say if it were me and I was in a company and I was doing extremely well in a reporting job and FP&A rule opens up within year 2, I think it's situational, and I would take that opportunity within that company. So again, there's no right or wrong answer. I think it's building expertise really along the way.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. So we have a few more questions, and we have 10 minutes left on the webinar. So if anyone does have any further questions, please submit them as soon as possible. So the next question is, how critical is it to have your CPA designation versus having a solid experience level? I.e., is there a reasonable level of flexibility in the market to hire candidates without their designation if they have a solid level of experience on their resume?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it all comes down to competition, right? So I think anything that you can do, whether it's educational or experience, to differentiate yourself from the other candidates that are interviewing for those roles. So it's a tight labor market, but yet it's still competitive. So I think it's always a good investment to be able to further yourself in terms of education or otherwise. So I would say if I didn't have my designation and I was giving myself advice, I would say get my designation.
That's great. That's what we like to hear. And I do have some more questions just coming through. Just bear with me one moment. So with growing regulatory reporting requirements, is there a good market for compliance roles? Is it a good career to go into?
Yeah, so I think the answer to that is yes. So compliance, whether it's internal audit or AML or something like that. So there are different parts of compliance. Compliance is a fairly big area, but I think compliance jobs are on the rise. And if you like the nature of the work, again, it really is a personal choice. And if you do like the nature of that work, I think compliance is on the rise, and it will continue to be on the rise.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. And let's see, as a senior level CPA, title is important now to ensure that it doesn't appear that I've been demoted. How do I ask for a title change when negotiating an employment offer? Do I do it before an offer, i.e. at the time of interview, or wait for an employment offer and ask for the title to be changed before signing the contract?
That's a tough one because sometimes even if you ask for it, it may not be possible. What I've seen is, my theory in life is just to be upfront and honest about everything. So I would say if you're going through a process and let's say you're interviewing for a manager's role and you're a director, but you're not really happy about the title, I think, again, it comes down to the size and scope and responsibility of the role, not really the title. But let's say it's a better job, it's more responsibility, but you're still uncomfortable. I think it's fairly, I think you have to be fairly open and honest that you're not comfortable with that and what can be done if you are the right level of individual. So it's a bit of a balance, meaning you have to be able to prove that you are the right individual, and the company has to believe that, because if they believe it, they may be apt to changing it. In some cases, they cannot. What I've seen in some cases is that they'll say, hey, listen, we have an internal structure that we have to adhere to because we're a multinational company. However, for an external title, for the market, you can use a director, but for internal, you can use a manager. So that kind of satisfies both, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And another one on the subject of titles. This is from one of the questions here. Is one of the things that I've noticed lately, often functions are packaged together, such as the title may not necessarily be reflective of the job description. So for example, someone may be called a finance manager, but oversee treasury, reporting, and even tax function. How would someone like this interpret the salary reports? How does one find where they should be in that range and what range?
Right. Yeah, and as I mentioned before, sometimes it's extremely situational, right? So this is data that we've pulled from the people that we've met and the placements that we've made. But to answer your question, a finance manager's job is very broad, right? It's one of the most commonly used titles out there, almost like a senior financial analyst. And it depends on the size and scope of the business. So as an example, if you're a finance manager in a $10 million company, all the things that you described there, you will be doing. But if you're a finance manager in a $1 billion company, your scope will be narrower. So I think it depends on the size and scope of business that you're working in. So, I would say if you're uncertain and, you're on this call and that was your question and you wanted to get a personal assessment, you can please reach out to us directly.
Great. Thank you so much. And the next question that we have is, what type of role is at the highest risk of being phased out due to automation? What type of role is the safest from automation?
That is a tough question. I'm not I'm not a machine learning expert by any means. But what we have seen is that in the big banks, as an example, there is automation in terms of reconciliations. And I would say, generally speaking, this is, again, it's not specific to finance and accounting, but generally speaking, anything that is manual in nature and can be coded is at risk. So, as an example, we did a Blackline event last year, and they did a case study about a company that was $1 billion company, and it grew to 10 billion. And they had, I'm going to get this wrong, but they had 1,000 finance people in that company when they were $1 billion. And when they were 10 billion, they still had 1,000 finance people. But the nature of those finance individuals changed. They went from, they eliminated all their back-end processing, and all those finance professionals, when it was a $10 billion company, were probably designated CPAs, adding value to the organization in terms of really distilling data and helping with leading the charge in terms of the future of the business.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for that answer. So the next one is actually more about Lannick. How does Lannick differentiate itself from other recruiter companies, and do you have any special features?
Oh, that's a great one. That's easy. So we are very different from any other company that we compete against, and the differentiating factor is, well, there are a few, but the one big differentiating factor I'll leave you with is that we run a dedicated service model, and that model is unbiased. It's, recruitment is typically a commission-based environment, and comp drives behavior. So I'm a shareholder of Lannick, and it's more expensive to run a model like this, but it leads to better candidate satisfaction and better client satisfaction. So we have sales managers that take care of the needs of our clients, ensuring that their needs are being met. And we have recruiters who are ensuring that our candidates' needs are being met. And we will show candidates roles across our business, across our 4 offices in the GTA, to ensure that they're seeing all roles that they may be suitable for. And then as a client, you're getting better access to candidates. And as a candidate, you're getting better access to roles. So it worked extremely well. So we worked in a cohesive team, well coordinated, and we have 90% of our business is actually repeat, which is extremely hard to find in this type of business.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin. And just a couple last questions now before we finish.
Yep.
Why does the market give a lot of weight to Canadian experience, where people coming from outside may bring more knowledge with regards to IFRS, for instance, which is new in Canada, in addition to dealing with different people's personalities?
Yeah, it's a great question. And my background is I moved here 18 years ago, and I was shocked by it as well. But what I can tell you is that it has gotten better, and we have placed individuals at some large companies with IFRS experience. So it is getting better. Canadian experience, for whatever reason, is still a requirement because it's just the unknown. Clients are just wanting to take the least risk possible in terms of hiring individuals. And I think it's just, I'm And, people are afraid of what they don't know. But what we're seeing is because the market's tighter, we're starting to see, and again, that's a job of a recruiter. We could go out and say, hey, listen, Mr. Client or Mrs. Client, this individual actually has IFRS experience from a Deloitte, as an example, in a different country. Please, we've met them, we like them, and I'm sure you're going to like them as well. So I think it's just I'm not accustomed to it as a client.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. And the last couple of questions now. What would you recommend for someone who has been out of the market for a little while, and where to start?
Contract is always a great way to get back into the market. And it's a good way to learn different industries, to get yourself eased back into the market, for lack of a better term. And you may actually find that one of the companies may want to hire you permanently. So that's probably the best way I can think of.
Great. Thank you very much. And we have a question about you. What inspired you to go into recruitment, and what can a CPA do if they are interested in going into recruitment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we make a joke around here saying that we're all recovering accountants. But I think it's, I found that, for me personally, I found that the education was really rewarding. Me personally, I liked interacting with people more than dealing with numbers, quite honestly. And as I mentioned before, 70% of the people on my team are CPAs. So it's a very rewarding career. You actually, it's quite altruistic as well, meaning you're helping people, you're making changes in their lives in an extremely positive way. And people are getting better jobs and living better lives because of some of the work that we're doing. And it's, and quite selfishly, it's quite lucrative as well.
That's great. And the last question now, just as we're finishing up, is why are most employers only looking for candidates from Big Fours? Why not the Big Tens or even smaller firms? Most jobs that I see state Big Four experience as a requirement. What's in employers' minds about Big Four candidates, which other small firms candidates don't have?
Right. And I think it's, so that's a very good question. I think it's, the assumption with most postings that you see is that they're looking for candidates with public reporting experience. But that is shifting, because some of my clients used to insist on having a Big Four background with public reporting experience. But because we're doing a good job of advocating for all our candidates in the marketplace, we're seeing that clients are willing to shift off of that, but they do want the experience, as an example, in terms of the public reporting experience, if it's a public client, because they feel that is too much of a risk to hire someone with experience that is non-public reporting. So we're placing individuals from really small firms and mid-market firms.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you once again, Kevin. We're coming to the end of our webinar now. Sorry for running a bit over. We just had so many fantastic questions. So thank you everyone for joining us today for the 2019 Compensation Outlook and Hiring Trends webinar today. We hope that you found this session informative. Please take a moment to complete our post-event feedback survey that will be sent via email tomorrow, along with a recording of today's session. And on behalf of CPA Ontario and Lannick, we'd just like to thank you for your time, and we hope that you have a great day. Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye now.